Aubrey Post stood on the roof of his house and thought about the future. How bright it would be, how well things would go for him. He looked forward to those things. He looked for a safe place to jump back down to earth and carefully landed back on the grass. He walked back inside and said goodbye to his girlfriend Lucy before Dave, his neighbor, tried to talk to him on the way to his car. Dave said the usual nonsense about being afraid of the world, but Aubrey wasn't afraid. Though for now he had a job to do, a security guard job. It wasn't a bad gig, mostly just walking around, chasing away the homeless and looking official, but it was just temporary to Aubrey. It was a fairly normal day, though some people seemed particularly tense, probably just impatient for the upcoming weekend. The first sign of something strange were some heavily armed soldiers who didn't say a word no matter what Aubrey said to them and avoided eye contact. That didn't distract Aubrey for long, though. He was more concerned about stopping a graffitier and taking a moment to listen to yet another street preacher talking about doom and gloom and seeing a street performance. All part of the charm of Louisville. Aubrey loved his city. As his shift ended, Aubrey went to run some errands, buying some tools. Lucy wanted to get a dog, you see, and Aubrey figured he could build a doghouse if he put his mind to it. Carpentry wasn't his specialty though, so he bought some bandages at the Med-UL, and Lucy's vitamins too, of course. Though when he made it to the library, hoping to get some books, it was already closed. So he drove back home, discovering that somebody had spray painted his car pink in the meantime, but Aubrey didn't mind that. He was always more interested in what was going on the inside of the car anyway. He stopped for gas around the corner too, and for some reason he felt that it'd be good to have a full tank this week, so he filled it up all the way. He had a meal and some TV, but he'd rather be studying about cars at the moment. He'd never get his own mechanic shop unless he learned more. The next day, Aubrey went to work and found that Louisville was covered in fog. There were more soldiers around the stores, and they still refused to say a single word to him. Though there was something even stranger afoot. The laundromat had some of its front windows smashed in, so Aubrey took out his nightstick and flashlight to investigate, but suddenly there was the sound of more glass breaking. There! A man in a tracksuit running away from the Goodman legal offices, which had its own front windows smashed in as well. Aubrey tried to chase him, but was distracted again by a woman running around with a bloody cleaver. He ran to apprehend her. Nothing like this had ever happened on the job before. She darted down an alley and Aubrey ran after her before noticing the chaos in the next building over. More glass breaking and... was that a gunshot? There were bodies on the floor and at least one person running away with a firearm in hand. Aubrey finally came to his senses and realized that this situation was beyond his jurisdiction to handle. He ran away and called the cops, but the line was down. No police? What was happening? He didn't see any soldiers, of course, right when he needed them, and so he ran back to the scene. The armed people had fled, and some passers-by were trying to help the two badly injured people. There was blood everywhere, and then a soldier walked by. They'd probably scared the murderers off. There was a gunshot in the distance. Aubrey was shaken, but he cleaned the broken glass up. He was good at his job. He did his best to finish his rounds, feeling jumpy, wondering what the hell just happened. With no ability to call the police, he was really just a guy with a nightstick. He took a moment to wash himself in a bathroom and gather his thoughts. It was all probably no big deal, just a couple of crazies or a satanic cult or something like that. Probably that's why the soldiers were there. Thankfully, it was a short shift that day. Aubrey would have called his boss, but he couldn't, and he just wanted to go home and feel somewhat normal again. He did a little grocery shopping on the way back. No work tomorrow, thankfully. Maybe it would be a good time to just relax at home for a little bit. He made dinner for himself and Lucy and tried to forget the day and go to sleep. Tomorrow would, of course, be better. Aubrey woke up very early as he walked over to the TV and heard the sound of glass breaking next door by Dave's house. Through one of his windows, he could see a broken window on the side of Dave's house, but was that Dave there next to it, or was that somebody else? It was hard to tell in the early morning gloom, so Aubrey grabbed his nightstick and flashlight before going outside to investigate. Briefly, he saw Dave, gun in hand, sneaking around his own house, a wild look in his eyes. Aubrey went back inside and locked the door and chuckled a little bit. That, at least, was somewhat normal. It wouldn't be the first time Dave broke something in his own home and blamed the government for it. So Aubrey tried to have a normal morning and watch some TV before tinkering with his car while Lucy looked on. She was also looking forward to Aubrey's dream of a mechanic shop of his own. One day soon, they were both sure. Aubrey, the previous day's craziness almost forgotten, drove into town to visit the library again. Everyone seemed to be talking about violence or that they were feeling sick, but Aubrey didn't pay that any mind. He grabbed some books on mechanics and first aid too while he was at it. A safe shop is a happy shop after all, and he wanted to have a safe shop when he got it off the ground. Near the shopping center where Aubrey worked, there were a lot of soldiers now. Probably just cleaning up after those crazies the other day, though, Aubrey thought. Though he did really wonder why the military would be handling this and not the police. But he had books to study and a business to plan. He didn't give the soldiers much more thought. He picked up pizza for dinner and all seemed well. Then, overhead, there was a helicopter blaring a message.
Stay indoors and lock your doors and windows. Do not approach or attempt to engage with any individuals exhibiting aggressive behavior.
Aubrey ran back to his car and sped home. When Aubrey got home, he made sure Lucy stayed inside with him. She was smoking and coughing an awful lot. Aubrey tried to concentrate on engine diagrams, but he was quickly distracted with the sound of sirens outside and the lights of emergency vehicles shining through the front windows. He walked outside to investigate. There, finally, a single police officer, and up the street a house was on fire. The firefighters did their job, and for the moment, Aubrey felt safe again. Things must be looking up. He even took the chance to do a little work on his car outside. The helicopter seemed to go away too after blaring its message out a few more times. Aubrey could finally concentrate on his reading and eating pizza. The next morning, there was no more helicopter and no more policemen out in the street, so Aubrey and Lucy decided to go to the park, get out of the house, do something fun. Surely the authorities had everything under control. Still, as they started to drive off, they couldn't help but notice that the police and fire vehicles in the street were still there from yesterday, and there was a gunshot nearby. Determined to have a nice day, they continued into town. Just to be safe, Aubrey decided to listen to the news on the radio.
We bring our report for today's morning. Citizens were horrified over the eerie broadcast sent out by the PD last night. Many were already barricading their homes and hoard for supplies. We now report on to the damages done by rioters last night. A family of 5 burnt in their house as arsonist strikes in Muldrow. 16 house intruders were apprehended in the gated community of Rosewood. Police clashes against looters in the commercial area of Riverside. West Point police are still tracking groups of carjackers who were responsible, hot wiring vehicles, and siphoning gasolines.
Bad news, but they didn't mention Louisville specifically. Probably just some biker gang or something, right? No way this could get any worse. They kept driving until there they saw on the curb, was that a corpse? A body, covered in blood, laid on the street corner. Aubrey drove further. There were more, just lying in the grass. No cops, no soldiers, no ambulances. Nobody was doing anything about them. Something was very wrong. They drove right over and past more corpses just lying in the streets next to homes. It was ghastly, disturbing, and there was no more denying it. Something was wrong, very, very wrong. Things were getting worse. They had to figure out what to do. So they stopped at the tool shop on the way home and bought nails and planks and whatever else they thought they might need. The prices were much higher than they had been a couple days ago, but it didn't matter. They were dipping into savings, but they had to do something. Lucy had been a gun owner for years, and Aubrey could barricade their house. He knew enough to do that. As he unloaded the planks from the car, he noticed their other neighbor had a broken window too, but Aubrey couldn't think about that. As he was putting another load of lumber into the spare room, there was the sound of glass breaking in the kitchen. There, in the living room, was a man attacking Lucy with a knife. Without thinking, Aubrey grabbed his nightstick and beat the man with it until his head exploded on the floor. The stranger wasn't moving. Aubrey didn't know what to do. They were both freaking out, so he grabbed the body and walked outside with it. Maybe that cop was still around, because, well, he still couldn't call them. The intruder was definitely dead, and, well, Aubrey didn't know what to do about it, except, well, drop the body next to the police car. When they came back, everything could be explained, Aubrey thought. Just as soon as things went back to normal, he and Lucy could explain to the police. So he didn't really know what to do. He made lunch, still in shock. He told Lucy that it was time to barricade the house, to admit that things weren't normal. There was blood all over the living room floor. She said that they shouldn't, that things weren't that bad. Aubrey checked up the street again, and there was still nobody that could help in sight. He even stopped by Dave's house, but nobody was home. Aubrey started boarding up the windows. Lucy was coughing really loudly. With the windows secured, they tried to watch TV and relax. When that didn't work, Aubrey loaded the gun he had taken off of the intruder's body. He hoped he wouldn't have to use it. He was still waiting for a squad of soldiers to walk up the street any second and put things back into order. Instead, it was really quiet outside, so eerily quiet, until the sound of cracking boards came from the kitchen. Another armed stranger jumped through the window, and Aubrey beat him down with his nightstick. He grabbed the gun from the bedroom. He should have kept it on him. Oh, that was stupid. The sound of boards being torn from the walls came from the spare room as well, and the sound of a man yelling. Aubrey shot him twice before he could even enter. Any one of these strangers could be a killer. Any one could be a murderer just like the first one. It was what he had to do. When the last intruder fled, Aubrey reboarded the windows as best as he could. He left the bodies outside, as a warning this time. Was that too extreme, was it? No. Until the authorities showed back up, it would have to be clear that he would defend himself and Lucy and his home. How had it come to this so quickly? Should he have just let them take what they wanted? Did he have to shoot at them? Or would they try to kill Lucy and himself? Aubrey didn't want to find out. Lucy kept watch as he slept. Canned food, hastily eaten for breakfast, nobody visible outside, just a brief shout down the street. Then there were the sounds of somebody breaking into the bedroom window. Aubrey tried to get him to flee this time with a warning shot. Whoever this man was didn't have any sense anymore. He looked insane. So Aubrey shot him too. What was happening to everybody? Aubrey slept as much as he was able to. The next day, there were more gunshots outside. And then the food ran out. It was either start to go hungry or head up the street to the corner store. When they entered, there was nobody behind the counter. Aubrey grabbed stale bread with a gun in one hand, some bourbon too. He left some money in the register though. They got back to the house and waited. There was no more glass breaking, no more gunshots, no helicopter. It was calm again. It was eerie. Eventually, Aubrey dumped all of the bodies next to the police car because they had started to smell. Still, he took the guns off of them. Each had a pistol. Each could have used it. Another night passed. Aubrey and Lucy hardly spoke. Neither felt safe in their own home without a gun close at hand. They listened to the silence tensely. Then came the moment they were both dreading and waiting for, that they were both trying to convince themselves wouldn't come. Angry yelling from the neighbor's house. Then the front door shook, and it was clear multiple looters were trying to break down the front door. When the door fell, they began to steal without regard for their own safety, even pocketing pieces of the door they had just torn down, suicidally pursuing loot as Aubrey gunned most of them down. The other two, they must have lost their minds. They ran directly past Aubrey and began to take things from his bedside table. Their hunger for stuff was all they seemed to think about, with empty eyes, even as Aubrey beat them down with a hammer. These people were dangerous. They were sick with something. There was something very wrong with them. There was something wrong going on, and this was not normal at all. They weren't acting normally. Aubrey and Lucy agreed. It was time to leave before they got killed. Louisville wasn't safe anymore. Any one of those looters could have shot them. They had to get out of town. Maybe to somewhere the military was protecting people, away from the looters and the craziness. Aubrey took anything useful he could from the bodies. Looting the dead still didn't feel right, but they need food and weapons. He started to fill the trunk of his car with everything that might be useful, anything they'd need to take with them. He couldn't bring himself to leave his mechanics books behind. Maybe one day he'd be able to learn in peace again. As they pulled away from their home, a helicopter blared another message overhead.
You are required to disperse. I repeat, you are required to disperse. Acts of anarchy will be dealt with. Respect the boundary zone. Disperse and stay in your home.
Aubrey hoped they would come back one day. As Aubrey tried to fiddle with the radio, he noticed something odd. A person just sort of shambling aimlessly in the street. Then, right past them, a platoon of police with their batons ready. Aubrey swerved down a side street and tried to get back on the road out of town. It was getting hard to concentrate on driving, but he kept going. There, further down the road, more people acting strangely, shambling next to the road like they were on drugs or something. They lurched toward the car, and Aubrey hit one of them as he sped away, but the person didn't shout or scream. They just fell over wordlessly. The further they drove, the more of these sick people they saw, walking towards them, other people. Aubrey stopped and thought about getting out and helping one person who was trying to flee. This person ran away from the shambling people, and they bit him. They ate him. So Aubrey drove away. The neighborhoods were chaos. People running, shamblers attacking, bodies strewn everywhere. Aubrey and Lucy had to leave. They had to leave this place right now. The squads of cops in the street clearly weren't enough to stop whatever was going on. Everybody was sick. Aubrey was panicked, lost, trying to find the highway out of town as he drove past innumerous horrible things. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. There had to be a way out of town, or the military quarantining the place, or something that they could go to. Finally, he found his way back onto the highway. Cars littered the intersection that led out of town, surrounded by people going simply mad. Aubrey managed to navigate his way around the wreckage. It wasn't much further now. Safety had to be close. There, some safety cones, something official looking in the street. There were tents, people running around. Was it some sort of evacuee camp? Where were the soldiers? Then Aubrey drove up to a fence. This had to be the edge of the cordon, but there were shamblers everywhere. Somebody was fighting them. Maybe there was a way through. So Aubrey parked the car. He knew that it might come to this. They'd have to fight. He beat the shamblers down with his nightstick as Lucy shot at them. These sick people were tough, inhumanly tough and dangerous. What was happening to them? One even bit Aubrey, but the two of them couldn't stop just yet. Whoever was fighting the shamblers wasn't winning. They were being eaten. There were bodies and blood everywhere. Maybe Aubrey and Lucy could slip through, get to the other side somehow, but the door was locked. More shamblers came over, moaning and groaning, covered in gore. Aubrey's heart felt like it was exploding in his chest from panic. They were terrifying. There was a whole pack of them between him and the outside. More of them came. Before Aubrey even thought to try opening the main gate, more seemed to show up constantly. Too many to handle, even with a gun. He lost Lucy in the chaos of the fighting as more shamblers kept appearing out of nowhere. Then, Lucy fell. And Aubrey ran. He took a moment to catch his breath in the trees. Aubrey was past shock at this point. He was numb and dumb with panic and grief and disbelief. What was happening to him seemed almost dreamlike. A large part of him just couldn't believe it at all, but he still knew he had to get back to the car, take a breather, figure out some way to get through that fence. As he snuck towards a shambler standing next to the car, another person suddenly emerged from the trees. Aubrey tried to shoot the thing, but not before the stranger beat the shambler down and then just ran off. To where, Aubrey could not know, but it wasn't his problem. Aubrey had just a moment before more shamblers showed up, and he knew more would come any second, so he grabbed Lucy's body. He wouldn't leave her there. Another shambler walked over to him as he pulled away and drove back into town. The shamblers were everywhere. Even the hospital was covered with them. People were being torn apart, eaten in the parking lot. Aubrey just wanted to find some semblance of safety. He was exhausted beyond words. He just needed to lay down, to catch his breath, to rest, to think. Gunfire, swarms of shamblers. There weren't even any cops in sight anymore. Aubrey made it to a neighborhood when he realized his windshield and hood had been completely destroyed somewhere along the line, but the car worked, so it didn't matter. He just had to hole up for a moment and take a rest. He tried to park in front of a house and at least get Lucy's body into the trunk, but shamblers were on him in a second, a crowd of them. Way too many to handle. Aubrey's heart pounded and his hands shook as he dashed back into his car and sped off. Lucy was still laying in the grass where he dropped her. He found another house and ran in for cover. There were bodies inside, blood on the floor, but also a woman boarding up a window and someone else in there too, acting very strangely. Just as Aubrey was asking if he could stay and rest, the strange one collapsed. A moment later, they jumped up and tore out the woman's neck in a single bite. Aubrey knew a shambler when he saw one now, and struck them down. Another shambler was clawing at the door, so Aubrey retreated to the bedroom. He was so tired beyond belief, so he closed the curtains and collapsed onto the bed. He ate some and had a little bourbon too when he woke up. He felt like he needed it more than ever. Somehow he had managed to sleep through the sounds of violence outside. Aubrey peeked out into the living room and it was full of shamblers, so he fled out the bedroom window. There were so many more in the front yard and the street, just too many. Aubrey managed to get in his car and drive away again, just barely. There were so many of these sick people, too many. What could possibly stop this? Was the world, was it ending? Was this it? Aubrey drove across the neighborhood until he found a house that seemed reasonably free of shamblers. The remains of a police officer were in front of the door. Aubrey took his holster. There were a couple of shamblers inside, and Aubrey took care of them too. Jets were flying overhead now. Shamblers came in ones and twos, but Aubrey could take care of them. He started to tear down furniture so he could barricade the house. Aubrey knew he could make it out of this, get a safe place to hole up, and then get out of town when things calmed down a little. There was plenty of gas in the car. He had food for a few days and plenty of weapons. He could make it out, even if Lucy never could, but he'd go back for her body. He'd bury her someplace nice. He had thought that maybe one day he was going to marry her. But anyway, the shamblers were slow. They were dumb. Aubrey thought he could figure out how to handle them, and he could always just drive away in his car and come back later, right? He'd survive this. He felt it in his heart. He'd open that mechanic shop one day. He'd name it after Lucy. He was taking a break to eat some lunch when the back door opened. The thugs shot Aubrey many times before he managed to limp away into a closet. Aubrey didn't even manage to get his gun out before they finished him. He didn't even get the satisfaction of seeing them get eaten by shamblers mere seconds later. Not like it would have mattered to him anymore anyway.